Okay. Hello, everybody. If you don't know me, I am Jan Paters, head of the Department of Computer Science here, and it's a great pleasure to introduce the company Madeo with today's presentation. It is Denisa Veličková and Hans Christian Granum, which will lead our session today. So I hope that you will enjoy it and spread the information about this event to your colleagues, and they will see our presentation on the web probably very soon, and Radek will help us to publish it. Okay, and one another, maybe several others will come. So enjoy and please.
Thank you for the introduction. First of all, I would like to welcome you here on our very first presentation. I have to say that we are happy to cooperate with this faculty, and we are glad that we had this opportunity to cooperate. And second thing which I wanted to say, it's sorry for the first introduction part. I did it in Czech, but I'm sure that you will understand it from the photos or whatever. And the second part will be held by Hans Christian Granum, which will be in English. This is the most important part of our presentation, so some others are coming. Welcome. Okay, so I will start in Czech, sorry for that. My jsme si připravili pro vás prezentaci ohledně moderních webových technologiích v Javě. Důležité je určitě říct, že přicházíme z firmy Madeo, potažmo BrandMaster. Madeo jako takové sídlí ve Zlíně, což předpokládám, že všichni asi tušíte, kde je Zlín, je to 1,5 hodiny cesty z Ostravy. Je tady někdo z jižní části, jste tady někdo z okolí Zlína, ze Zlínského kraje třeba? Nikdo? Nikdo není. Všichni jste z Ostravy? Ne, odkud jste? Někdo mě zařvěte. Aha, jo, super, to je jaký blízko. Tak jo, my ačkoliv sídlíme ve Zlíně, tak stejně jakoby se snažíme vyrovnat ty podmínky, které mají třeba firmy, IT firmy v Praze nebo v nějakých větších městech. Vidíte naše kanceláře, my rosteme, takže vlastně teďka jsme otevřeli další patro a porosteme ještě dál. Ty plány jsou veliké. Sídlíme tedy ve Zlíně, chtěla jsem vám ukázat, jak Zlín vlastně vypadá, pokud jste tam nikdy nebyli, tak je to krásné takové zelené město plné cihel. Každý, kdo k nám přijede, tak je z toho úplně nadšený, protože to je fakt město, ve kterém chcete žít. Když chcete tam žít se svojí rodinou, protože poskytuje takový ten filtr velkého města, kde prostě trávíte hodinu dojížděním někam. Ve Zlíně prostě vám to trvá maximálně 15 minut a jste vlastně tak nějak jakoby v klidu toho menšího města. Zlín má každopádně asi 80 000 obyvatel, takže to není zase tak malé, takže naopak vám poskytuje i takové ty nějaké kulturní věci, zážitky a tak dále, přednášky, co vás zajímá. Chtěla jsem vám ukázat, že vlastně u nás teďka jako se staví ta dálnice konečně přes ten Přerov. My doufáme, že za pár let už to bude hotové, už je to jako dobře nakročené, tak za chvilku to z Ostravy bude k nám trvat 1 hodinku, ani ne, bych řekla. A teďka o Madeu jakožto takovém, potažmo BrandMasteru, já to za chvilku vysvětlím. Nejsme nějací úplně nováčci na trhu, pozbírali jsme i nějaké ceny, na které jsme jako náležitě hrdí, ale řekla bych takovým tím zdravým způsobem. Jsme za ně rádi a vážíme si těch ocenění. Je to takový revanš za to, že děláme svoji práci dobře, takže to nás samozřejmě těší. A v minulém roce se vlastně stalo to, že jsme se stali součástí norské firmy BrandMaster. Po dlouhé spolupráci, po dlouholeté dobré oboustranné spolupráci jsme se stali tedy jejich součástí a od toho roku vlastně jenom rosteme a ty plány jsou ve Zlíně opravdu veliké. Takže růst určitě budeme. Kdy máme všude kanceláře, máme jako tak nějak rozesety po celé Evropě díky té akvizici s BrandMasterem a díky dalším akvizicím, které probíhají nebo proběhly a budou probíhat. Prostě BrandMaster roste a růst určitě bude. Nově budeme otvírat třeba novou kancelář v Londýně, takže to nás čeká v létě. Jinak jsme v Oslu, ve Stockholmu, Kristiansendu. Abyste si udělali takovou jako rychlou představu o tom, jak jsme velicí, tak společně s BrandMasterem je nás 72. Každopádně to číslo se furt mění. My v Madeu rosteme průměrně o 1,5 člověka za měsíc, takže to číslo se neustále vyvíjí a zvětšuje. Akvizic jsme měli, proběhlo 5 akvizic a nějaké další jsou v plánu. A nejsme úplně nováčky na trhu, tady víc než 10 let. Tak, toto je, protože ten IT svět je nějakým způsobem takový přeplněný zkratkami, tak toto je jedna z dalších zkratek. A já jsem si 100% jistá, že vám to vůbec nic neřekne, tak jak mě to nic neřeklo, když jsem to poprvé viděla. A je to, tady máte vysvětlení, to vám asi taky nic neřekne. A když to ještě přeložíme a nějak jako dovysvětlíme, tak to znamená, že vlastně pomáháme velkým korporacím řídit jejich marketingové týmy. Říkám velkým korporacím, protože naše produktové portfolio, které vyvíjíme společně s BrandMasterem, se právě soustředí na ty velké korporace, které mají obří marketingové týmy. Nevyplatily by se naše produkty týmům, které mají prostě 2-3 markeťáky. Musí to být opravdu velké firmy. Někteří z našich klientů, spousta z nich třeba, já nevím, jsou tam nějaké norsko-švédské společnosti, které vám třeba nic moc neřeknou. Nicméně, když přijedete do Norska, tak vidíte všude, jsou to jedny z největších firm, které tam nějakým způsobem působí. Jeden z našich posledních klientů je Coca-Cola, kterou jsme vlastně získali díky poslední akvizici a tak se těšíme, co společně vymyslíme. Tady jsou další nějací naši klienti, pro které vyvíjíme naše produkty. A aby to nebylo tak nudné, abyste se trošku jako zorientovali v tom, co děláme, tak tady je takový jakoby příklad, jenom takový záblesk toho příkladu. Je to implementace našich produktů, našeho portfolia pro Mercedes-Benz. Ty data pro vás budou asi zajímavější a dají vám nějakou komplexnější představu než mě. Tady je další. Tady na tomto je vlastně zvláštní nebo zajímavé to, že tento obrázek byl vygenerovaný naším systémem. Určitě se o těch našich produktech lze dozvědět více, když se podíváte na stránky přímo BrandMasteru. Já do toho nechci moc zabrušovat tady, aby jsme museli vybrušovat. Každopádně toto je jeden z našich dalších klientů, Circle K, který vlastně není moc známý tady v Evropě, nebo v České republice vůbec, bych řekla, ale tato síť je velmi jakoby známá v Americe. Circle K tam vidíte na každém rohu, zaměstnává 180 000 zaměstnanců a fungují na našich systémech. Takže to je další z hezkých ukázek nějakých jako implementací. Tak, and it's my pleasure to move to second important part of our presentation. I would like to invite here Christian Granum, who is a Java developer of BrandMaster company, and I would like to give him a word. So, good luck.
Thanks, Denisa. Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Granum, and I work as a senior developer in BrandMaster, which you now have heard a little bit about. I've been working as a software developer for 15 plus years, I wrote. I'm not sure exactly how many years, but it's been some time now. So let me know if you can hear me okay and if you understand everything I'm saying, and feel free to interrupt me with questions during the presentation if you need to. Let's move on. Why in the world would you want to work as a Java developer? Java has a reputation for being slow, overly verbose. You need to write a lot of ceremony around it to make it work. It's old. We have newer, more modern languages. So some people say that Java is dead, right? So in Norway, for example, the Norwegian banking system chose to use Java on the login page for every bank. If you were going to do online banking, you needed to have the Java applet plugin in your browser, right? And it was a nightmare. You had to, and remember this is some years ago, so we had to install the plugin like tens or more megabytes, which you downloaded over ISDN on that time, right? And every time you went to your bank and wanted to pay some bills, you had to update that damn plugin because of some security hole. So for many years, when I told people that I was working with Java, I got very angry looks, and well, Java wasn't very popular then. So just to be clear, we're not talking about Java in the browser or like applets. We're talking about Java on the server side, and no, Java isn't dead on that part. According to the TIOB index, which is some page that measures popularity over time in programming languages, Java is on top and has been there for quite a long time. According to the recent questionnaire on Stack Overflow, Java is the second most popular language, only surpassed by JavaScript, which is also very important to learn in the modern web development. But for server side, Java is as popular as it has ever been. So I guess that Java might not seem like a modern language, but with the advancements of Java 8 and now 9 and suddenly 10 also came, Java is starting to catch up with the other languages on features and looks and feels more like a modern language to work with. So no, Java isn't dead, at least not yet, and we'll still be around for many years. So yeah, that's why you should study Java. There's a lot of big companies using Java, like. For example, Twitter started on Ruby on Rails, but weren't able to scale. I don't know if you remember in the early days, they had the fail whale that always came up. Their site crashed all the time. They had to rewrite all their code back to Java or JVM languages, and yeah, so they had to go over to the Java platform to make it work. Also, these other companies, Google is a big contributor to the Java ecosystem. Netflix also has released plenty of good libraries. So Java is alive and kicking. So what I would like you to take back from this session is sort of a view on how it is to work as a real life programmer. I know that when I went to the university, I was overloaded by all this theory and didn't get like a complete view of what we were actually doing out there, right? What it was like to actually work with programming. So I want to take you through the whole development process from where we start and hopefully to some sort of finished product after a while. And we'll also take a quick look at how the the landscape has changed over the years. How Java now uses lambda expressions to become a more complete and more full language. And we'll look at some ways to bypass all this ceremony in Java, all the plenty of code you have to write, and try to get a quick real-time example of a backend for a web application. So you can sort of say that the development process starts with an idea, but most often it starts with a problem you have, right? You have, or your customer have, or your product owner has a problem. And as for the customers, they have a tendency to not only present to you the problem, but they also have a tendency to come up with some solution on their own, right? And it's important to understand that the solution the customer gives you might not always be the best one. So you need to dig in and ask questions about what is your problem, what are you trying to solve with this, before presenting them with an idea. So after you have a problem, then you get an idea to how to solve it. So let's take myself as an example here. What is my problem right now? Well, I'm supposed to give a presentation to a whole lot of students, and I've promised to develop a web application while I do it. So I'm brainstorming then what possibilities do I have. It has to be reasonably short. It has to not be too difficult, so I can do it in like a few minutes. So what I thought would be a good idea then was to try to sort of create a web application that gave you the possibility to give me feedback after the lecture, that we could have some questions and you could answer them maybe on your mobile phone or something. So that was my idea. There is a Norwegian app called Kahoot, which is sort of the same. It's educational online learning through gamification. So I don't know if you heard of this one. It's I think one of the only successful apps that comes from Norway. Anyone heard of it? Yeah. So actually, yeah, it might not be too unsuccessful. That's cool. So then, when you have had the idea, you start with gathering requirements. What are the requirements for the app? which is what we're going to develop now in this session. So what you try to do then is to create a mental model of how everything is going to look, figure out who am I creating this for, who are going to use it. For example, what kind of users do you have? Do you have like an administration role and a user role? And you try to communicate with your customers as much as possible to find out what they expect from this app. You try to communicate with the developers what is feasible. And you try to create some sort of list of what you must have to make the app successful, what you should have, and what is sort of nice to have, right? And that can make for the priorities later. Yeah, so this comic sort of illustrates what goes wrong when the communication breaks down, right? First of all, the customer comes to you with what he needs, which obviously isn't what he really needs, right? Because it's a swing with 3 seats, and the project leader has his understanding of it. The designer does something, the programmer creates like what we call a minimum version. It's not really functioning, but it's sort of what is required. Right, and at the last point, what the customer really needed was something much more simpler. So, trying to find out what problem we are actually trying to solve instead of going for the solution the customer explains, for example. Yeah, so for the example app, at least I know we need 2 different roles. We need sort of an administrator, which can create these questions, and we need a user role, which will respond on the questions. But actually, if we start to talk about the domain language, we need to create a specific language for this app that we are creating. We want to take terms from the real world and incorporate them in our code. So instead of having a user, we're going to take this specific situation where I am creating an app to use in this setting. So instead of a user role, we will call it a student role, because you guys are students, right? Instead of calling it an administrator role, we'll call it the lecturer role. And now we're starting to create a language which we can use to communicate with the customer and incorporate their terminology into our code, and that should make the communication much easier. So this is one part of what it's called domain-driven development, which we don't do rigorously, but we take some elements from that and use. Okay, so we're going to have these 2 roles: students, lecturer, and for the student role, we want to be able to register a name, for example, and we want them to be able to answer the questions. For the lecturer role, we want to be able to create the questions and define the possible answers. Maybe set the time out for answering so that when I show the question on the projector, you have like 30 seconds to answer. We want to, as I said, show the questions on the projector, show the results. And maybe I want to store the answers somewhere so I can review them after the lecture. So that's the requirements I've set for the app. That should then be enough to start the specifications of the functionality of the app. So what we like to use there is sort of taken from the agile development or Scrum terminology. So we like to create user stories, which is a short sentence that specify behavior of a single piece of functionality in the app. And easy way to do that is to write a sentence on the form of, as a title user, I want some goal that for some reason. So, for example, in our application, and okay, so when do we start thinking about naming stuff? It's like maybe it's too early to name this now. Maybe at least when you start writing code, you need something to call the project, and of course that's naming is also part of the marketing, right? So maybe you don't decide on the name before the product is finished and marketing is shipping it. Then you can use code names like they do in the big projects, like I know Windows 95 when that came, it was called Project Chicago, I think. So you can call it Project Ostrava. I was just wanting to know if anyone had a suggestion for the quiz app we're going to create. My suggestion was voter without an E, vote R, because that sounds very Web 2-ish. Always cut out the consonants. I guess you can call it that. Yeah, so we named our application, and let's get back to the specification. So in our case, we have the roles defined. So as a student, I want to register my nickname so that I am able to answer questions. So that goes specifically on one of the requirements we set, and we then create like a simple way of knowing what we should create, and that should also be testable if we have people that test our code. Then I go back to the user stories, and I can actually see that if I log in to the system as a student, can I then register my nickname, for example? As a student, I want to answer a question so that the result is saved for retrieval. As a lecturer, I want to register a question with possible answers so that the students have some questions to answer. I think the last part is a little bit difficult sometimes. Why do you want it? Well, because the customer said so, really? Or so? But you should try to find some reasoning because of why you are implementing that part of the functionality. Yep. Let's see. sometimes you have what we call preconditions in user stories. Something needs to have been done before this user story can be used. So I guess we have two ways to show that. We can add another term as a student, having already logged in, and logged in will then refer to another user story. Or actually I should say registered there, as I did call it registered in the other user story. But you can use it that way, having already registered, I want to answer a question, so that result is saved. Or you can just mark it as a precondition to the user story. The next phase of the development is sort of designing the application, what it should look like. We have usually designers that do that work for us, which have as their job to make things look good and function properly to enable the app to work the best. I didn't have access to a designer, so I did it myself, and this is the result. It's not too pretty, I think, but it would probably work. So this is how I imagine the front end for the student role. And for the lecturer role, you would log in, you would get the list of who has registered, you would have the possibility to add a question, you would have the possibility to start the quiz. And this is how the view could look when you started the quiz, that you show the question, show the possible answers, and then show the results at the last step. So this is actually what we require before we even start thinking about coding. Now when we start to actually code, what do you think is the most important skills for programmers to have? Well, in my view, I guess readable code is the most important. You will have to write code for other people to read. You must remember that you most certainly always are working as part of a team, and it's not always yourself that is maintaining the code. You might even have left the company before someone tries to solve a bug in your code, and you don't really want people to call you afterwards when you have left the company. So sort of writing simple code, which is easy for others to read, is the most important. And Robert C. Martin, or Uncle Bob, as he likes to call himself, has written a very good book about this clean code. So that is my book tip for you, if you haven't already read it and been suggested, then you should go out and buy this right after this lecture. The point is that you might be a very clever programmer which can create solutions to very complex problems in a very short amount of code, and that might work good for you, but I am not a very smart programmer, right? So when I read code, and my rule of thumb is that if I don't understand what it says, then the, the program is too complex, right? You should try to divide it up in simpler parts and solve each part in a very simple way. So then when I, as not a very clever programmer, can read it and understand what at least you tried to do, then it should be possible for me to also go in and solve whatever bug you wrote, because then I understand it, right? If I don't understand how the program is supposed to work, then I have no chance of actually solving the bug either. So when you write code, you should write for me. I'm not a very smart programmer, right? Yeah, so this goes to the same points. So when we in like modern Java or modern web development, Java has this role in the back end, what we call server side, talking to databases, executing the actual business logic, where the front end is mostly HTML and JavaScript. So I guess if you remember the 80s hairstyle mullet, the Americans, they called it business up front, party in the back, like serious stuff here, but everything goes wild in the back. So I was thinking that modern web development was like a reverse mullet, where we had the business logic going on in the back, and in the front end with JavaScript and HTML, everything is completely crazy. You got all these new libraries, you got animations, you got sounds, but the back end side is where the seriousness happens, and that's where we do the real work, right? We don't care about making corners like rounded corners, for example. That's for the JavaScript or HTML guys. So when it comes to programming, it's important to choose the right tools for the job. Some people like to code just in the text editor, but know that there are tools out there that will help you become more productive in what you do. For example, selecting which, we'll get to that, but also learn the tools you choose. Good. So invest some time, for example, in whether you use IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse, just learn the shortcuts, get them in the fingers, know how to utilize your tools, so that you become the best or most productive programmer that you can be. There are a lot of tools to select from for Java, for integrated development environment. We have Eclipse, we have IntelliJ IDEA, we have NetBeans. In BrandMaster, we've fallen in love with IntelliJ, but we also have guys that have worked in Eclipse and think that is good enough. It's not really about what tool you select, it's just about learning that tool. Good enough. Choices for source control. Actually, I think Git has won this war. We use Git in BrandMaster. We used Subversion many years ago, and I heard about someone using Mercurial. But it's really the same there. Learning to use Git as a tool will help you in your daily life, and you will always get some issues with merge conflicts that you need to resolve, and learning how to do that within the tool will help you be more productive. Other tools we use, Bamboo for continuous integration. When we commit some code into Git, Bamboo automatically pulls it out. It runs, it compiles the code, runs unit tests and integration tests, and can also be used to automatically deploy to the environments if everything is successful. Alternatively, you can use Jenkins, which is an open source tool. Bamboo is part of the Atlassian stack, which costs some money, but you can also find that spending money on tools that make you more productive might be worth it, not just choosing open source tools. And our Git repositories are in Bitbucket. Our bug report system is in Jira, and we use Confluence for documentation. Little bit about the sort of cycle of feedback you get when you program, because to be a productive programmer, it's sort of important that you get feedback from your changes as fast as possible. So, as I said, using an IDE is what the IDE does is compile your code while you're editing it. So for simple errors, you get feedback instantly, right? If you forgot a semicolon at the end of the line, it will tell you that right away. But if you're as old as me, you might have programmed Java before there were any IDEs, and then you had to first edit the text file, then you ran the compiler, and you got the feedback. So that could be like several minutes from you made the error with the semicolon till you actually get the feedback that you had made that error. And of course that makes the process much longer. So using an IDE will give you feedback on these simple mistakes almost instantly. Then of course you should have unit tests, which you can actually set them up to run instantly, but at least you run them before you do a commit, right? And that should give you feedback in seconds if you have broken some tests, if you have ruined any code that you didn't expect to ruin. So for the logic of the program, it's important to have these unit tests that gives you also very fast feedback on what functionality you might have destroyed during your coding. So the part where you maybe run your system and actually test it locally on your computer, that can be something that takes up to minutes just to start your development server on your computer. So any mistake you can catch before that is, of course, enhancing your productivity. And when you then are happy and you check in your code, then your CI server, Bamboo in our case, runs also your code, runs integration tests, and if something breaks there, you will get an email that said you broke the build. But depending on how that is set up, that can take up to hours to get that response, right? So then you might have moved on to another task if you don't get that right away. And when the CI build is happy, you deploy the code and you get QA people to look at your code and test it. That could be a response that takes up to days, and if you have mistakes that actually go into the wild, into production, then you get feedback from your customers, and that can happen in weeks, months, and then you have no idea what you were actually thinking when you wrote that part of the code, right? So setting up an environment that makes you get feedback on the things you do as fast as possible is very important, and of course unit testing is an important part of that. Creating tests that give real value back. Here it's missing something, so we'll skip that. When it comes to Java development and web development, you have a rich environment of libraries and applications that can help you. So, sort of like in the JavaScript environment, it's important to know what to select and what to avoid. What is popular today might not be as popular tomorrow. So we try to choose frameworks that has been around for a while, has proven its stability, has proven its maturity. And it's possible to see sort of maybe on GitHub how many stars it has, so you're not the only one using this product. For example, for running your applications, you have the possibility to choose from Tomcat server, Jetty server, Wildfly, if you want to run a full-fledged enterprise edition version, and many others. You also have this new sort of lightweight application servers. Drop Wizard uses Jetty in the background, but embeds it and creates a runnable jar from it. Same with Spring Boot. By default, they use Tomcat and embeds it in a single runnable file, which is quite small and makes it easy to deploy. So these are some considerations you should do. Just think that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, right? You shouldn't try to program something when some others may already have created a better solution for you. Just use established libraries that have already been created. So for JSON serialization, we have Jackson and JSON. For REST, we have Jersey or Spring MVC. And maybe for data persistence, you can use Hibernate if you want. So right. I'm going to try to write a little bit of code to create the back end of this application that we have sort of tried to specify now. I won't be able to write the full, but I'll give you sort of an impression of what it takes to start web API program in Java. So I'm a little bit excited on how I'm going to do this, but let's try to fire up the IDE here. So as I said, we tend to use IntelliJ. I probably have to, yeah, it comes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Spring Boot application that I talked about, which is it's an easy, lightweight solution to create web applications, and it takes a lot of choices for you in what libraries to incorporate in your application, and makes you able to create code in a quite fast time. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to go next. I'm going to call the package from BrandMaster. And what did I want to call it? Voter. Voter, yes. We're going to use Java 8. This is fine. The next project, I'm selecting kind of what components of Spring Boot I want to include. I'm going to talk a little bit about Loanbook, so I'm including that. And I'm going to include the web aspects here. A small confession I have to make is that, of course, when we talked about this real-time voting application, I instantly thought about WebSockets, right? We should use WebSockets for this functionality. And I started preparing on that, and I got completely lost, so I had to move away from that. But that is absolutely something to look at. But I'm going to create a sort of normal REST-like API now instead. I think we are okay with that. Wait. All right. So it wasn't happy with it? Or yeah, it comes. So, for some reason now, it's not completely happy with my import, I think. Yeah. So this is another feature you get from the IDE, that you get instant feedback when something is wrong with your imports. And for my part now, it's that I don't have access to this 2.1 release. We use a custom Maven server in BrandMaster, which probably hasn't downloaded the latest release, so I just changed this to 0. I enable auto import of the Maven file, because why not? And then it should be able to download the correct packages. Yeah, and everything is yellow and happy. So with Spring Boot, this is the code you need to start an application server. It's not too bad. If we start with service, we can enter that in controllers. We call it question controller. Now this should be, let me see. So we should tag this with sort of REST controller rules. What this does is tell the application that this class wants to receive calls from the outside with some parameters and be like a RESTful endpoint. And we can then just say that the mapping to this should be if we say that this should receive all questions. No, we should get all questions. This, like this. Okay, so we should have a method that gets a list of questions. What's a question? We have to define that. Let's add that to our model. We're going to store it in the database as well, so we give it an ID, just a unique ID. We need to give it a topic, which is like what should the question contain. And it also needs a set of answers. So we're going to give it let's call it answer array. Now, first of all, I said I included Lombok because in the spirit of object encapsulation, you always have private variables and you expose them with getters and setters. So in this case, I should have done something like this, create getter and setter for it. I don't think this adds to the readability of the class. I think it's just like fluff that exists there because it has to. So one way to do that is to use this library called Lombok, which takes, well, it has different. It has some annotations for leaving out like boilerplate code. So if I tag this with data, it then in the background creates these getters and setters for me. They are actually part of the class, but don't show up in the source code. And for my part at least, this makes it a little bit more easy to read these short classes that only have variables and getters and setters. The data annotation also creates a default constructor with all parameters, I think, and it creates equals and hash code methods for the class. So, yeah, let's get back to our controller class. Import this one correctly. Now I guess this should be done from a database. So what we are going to do is also include I should have done this from the start, included a Spring Boot JPA and an H2 database. But we can add that in the Maven file. So let's see here. I'm just Googling it and finding out what it says. So we can add that here. Or actually we're going to add it there, it doesn't matter. Dependency. And let's also add the So now I should be able to add repository also for the questions. So let me just quickly try to do that. Add a Java class called question repository. It is going to extend CRUD repository of type question using the long as ID. And it's an interface actually. So in our controller now, we should have the possibility to include that interface. The way we do that is using the auto-wired annotation. What's going on? And we just say question repository. So that means that here we should have the possibility to repository find all, for example, and that is something the repository, the CRUD repository gives us automatically. The find all doesn't return a list, it returns an iterable. We just say that that is okay. Just let it do that. I'll also add a post controller here to post new questions into the database. So I'm saying that we're going to post to question. Method equals post. This one needs to be body request body parameter. I think this is correct. And we'll just return repository dot save. So to make our, well, first of all, we haven't added the answer yet, so we'll do that. This one is still red, so we need to new Java class answer. And to store that in the database, we'll also... That is no in Norwegian. Private long ID. We'll have a reference to the question. We'll have a string for the answer value. And also an integer for votes. Also, to make these storable by the framework in the database, we have to annotate it with the entity annotation. And we also have to provide some hints to the framework how to store this in the database. So we just need to tell it that this is the ID field. It should be generated for us. Auto-generated. Also, we need to say that this is a reference to another part of database. So we have to say that this is a relationship to a different table. We'll say something about the whether it should retrieve all the objects for the child table or not. This one, I guess, has something to do with if we delete it, will it delete the children as well? And this says something about what property in the child object we are using to map this. And we have to do the same here. In the answer, we have to say that it's an entity. We'll copy this to the ID field. All right. And here also we have to say that this is sort of a join column. Many, 2, 1. And what column we are joining on. Yes. I wonder if it's time to try to run it. Data. Thank you. There. So let's see what happens now. So it starts up. It didn't like something here. List array has to be annotated with an order column, it says. So this is in question. It needs to know something about which order to retrieve the data. So we'll say order column, and we'll just say that it should order on the ID field for some reason. Let's try again. So it claims it is running. Let me say to test JSON APIs, I like to use Postman. So let's see if I can run it. That's okay. So first of all, let's put a breakpoint in our controller here and see that we're actually getting where we think we are. So here I try to get all the questions that is stored. That should be none right now, right? When I send this, well, it calls the correct method. It says repository find all, and let's see what it returns. Empty array, so that's quite cool. It's working as it should. If we try to post to the question endpoint with body containing a topic, how are you today? This was called answers, right? And yep. So if we try to send that, we can see here that this has actually decoded our query reasonably correct. Or let's look at it down. Here you can see the question. It has a topic and it has 4 possible answers. So let's see if it's able to store it. Yeah, so the response we get back is well, the same object that we sent in. It has got an ID. Let's try to post a different object. Yeah, we'll skip these, and we'll see if we got the. Did I just hide my response? Oh, there it is. Oh no! This I'm not sure what to do about. I have done some mistake in the primary key configuration of answer, so it's not able to store two answers. Let's see what it says now if we try to get the questions again. It only has one question. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to debug this error while sitting here. Actually, you sort of see the possibility to create this web API, and I think this is as far as we're going to get in this class. So yeah, it's. You can see that creating APIs in Java is could be done quite rapidly. Also storing the data. Yeah. So thanks, I guess. Any questions for me? Yeah.
We also use Java for our projects, but we are thinking about Kotlin for our next development project.
Yeah.
Are you using Kotlin?
I have not used Kotlin, but it's a very, very exciting new language. So that is also part of the Java ecosystem, right? The other languages that run on the JVM, and Kotlin takes some of the more modern approaches to development. But as I say, Java is catching up. Now we have the var in Java 10, the var to initialize variables instead of writing the whole type. Personally, I have considered looking at Kotlin, but as part of a team, you need to try to look at the bigger picture and see if this is the direction you're going to go in. And I guess that getting people that know Kotlin is maybe more difficult at the time being, at least. But it's an exciting part of the language, absolutely. Yeah, anyone else? No? Then thank you again for coming. Hope you managed to get something out of it. And if there's anything you wonder about later, you have our contact information. The presentation will be shared somewhere at the university. And yeah, just let us know.